Okay, today I'd like to talk about the South Pole t-shirt and Maria Orsic and the fake UFO invasion which is about to come. Now the other day I was walking down the street and I saw a person wearing a t-shirt that said South Pole. And so I was wondering to myself, I wonder where that person got the t-shirt and why would they buy a t-shirt that said South Pole on it. So then I started thinking, well, has this person ever been to the South Pole? I don't think so. Has this person ever known anybody that's been to the South Pole? Probably not. So how many people have been to the South Pole? Maybe a handful, maybe a couple hundred, and these people would be researchers. So why is it that there are millions of t-shirts being bought by people that say South Pole on it? And I think there is a connection, and that's what I'm going to try and explain here what the connection is. The person who came up with the idea for the South Pole t-shirt was probably just somebody trying to come up with some wild idea to sell t-shirts, but for some reason the idea took off and millions of people bought these t-shirts that say South Pole on it. Now the connection here, I believe, has to do with Maria Orsic. And Maria Orsic was a channeler who started the Vril Society in Austria in the 1930s, which Adolf Hitler later joined, and that became the Nazi Party based on this occult society called the Vril Society. Now Maria Orsic was a channeler. She was very young. She had long hair. She spoke Austrian, and she had a direct connection with flying saucer technology, which is that the Vril Society actually developed the anti-gravity and built flying saucers that actually worked. So the South Pole connection here comes in at the point where during the 1940s the Nazi Party traveled to the South Pole many times, and they built underground cities in the South Pole, and they call it New Schwabenland. And they also predicted that they would be coming back as the Fourth Reich. So my feeling about this whole thing in regards to Maria Orsic is that during the 1950s there were several UFO contactees who described German-speaking humans that stepped out of flying saucers. And the photographs that came from George Menger, George Van Tassel, a lot of the UFO contactees from the 1950s, the photographs of the UFOs that they filmed looked exactly like the German UFOs. Not only that, but the occupants of the UFOs that landed and spoke to these contactees were blonde, blue-haired, German-speaking occupants. Okay, so later on in the 1970s you have the Billy Meier's case. He's contacted by Semjase. Now my belief is that Semjase is actually Maria Orsic. Fits the same description. Long hair, speaks Austrian, and steps out of a flying saucer. Now I believe that the UFO contactees of the 1950s were duped, and they were duped by the Nazis. Later on in the 1970s, I believe Billy Meier was also duped by the Nazis, and that Semjase is actually Maria Orsic. So this whole thing ties in with what's being talked about quite a bit right now, which is the fake UFO invasion. Now, one of the things that I looked into was the work of Keith Hunter. And the reason I looked into his work is because there's a lot of controversy right now about Comet Elenin. And I believe a lot of this controversy that's being generated is really nothing more than a lot of hysteria to sell products. Like, for example, in the movie The Quickening, they talk about the trajectory of the comet, and that the tail of the comet comes in contact with Earth, and that a very dangerous gas is going to cause a lot of deaths on Earth. But the email that I received from Keith Hunter, who's a professional astronomer, he indicates to me that none of the other comets that ever came within contact with the tail of a comet were ever dangerous. Not only that, if they're claiming that this is true, that they would have to prove that the tail of the comet is capable of penetrating Earth's atmosphere, which they don't do in the video. So my feeling about The Quickening is that it was a nice video to watch. It was very entertaining, and in some ways very nicely done. But my feeling about the video is that it is a doomsday sales pitch to sell survival products. Now, if you watch Keith Hunter in his videos, he's a professional who explains everything scientifically. There's no doomsday sales pitch anywhere in any of what he says. It's all scientific. He's not really selling anything at all. He has a book that's for sale, but the book that he's selling is not a doomsday sales pitch. It's just simply his research put into the form of a book. So, I think that there's a lot of trying to figure out what's going on in the world right now in the form of deception. There's a lot of deception out there, and I think that deception comes in the form of hysteria. And what that hysteria does is it encourages people to buy products to allure them to this idea of finding out more and more about it and preparing themselves for this ultimate doomsday scenario, which I believe is being created out of nothing. So I believe that the best way to look at this whole thing, it's also tied into the financial collapse. There's a connection between the financial collapse right now and the Comet Elenin, the fake UFO invasion. A couple of weeks ago I sent an email to Colleen Thomas, and I was saying in this email all of these things about the UFO contactees being duped by the Germans. And then I also believe that Billy Meier was duped by the Germans, and that Semjase is actually Maria Orsic. Now, I wasn't trying to convince her to change her mind or about anything. It wasn't anything like that. I was just basically sending my ideas off to her in an email, and she wrote back and she said that she agreed. About a week later, there's a comment from her on her Facebook page saying that she had changed her mind, and now she believes that she had been duped by the Pleiadians. Now, I had nothing to do with this. I wasn't trying to do this. She also says in her post on Facebook that this came about as the result of speaking to someone who pointed out to her that she had been duped. So I really believe that there's a connection here between the t-shirts that are going around that say South Pole, and that the South Pole connection has to do with the rise of the Fourth Reich, that these Nazis have something to do with this fake UFO invasion, which is about to occur, or perhaps it's occurring in some parts of the world already, and that the South Pole was used by the Nazis, that they built cities out there, and now they are now returning in their flying saucers, and they are creating UFO flaps and abductions and on and on and on, that they're doing all these things, and that there's a direct connection between the financial collapse that's happening right now, the frenzy that's being created by Comet Elenin, and I believe that the conclusions of Keith Hunter are probably the best conclusions of all, and I don't have time to explain all of that, so I'm just going to end it here and leave it there. And if anybody wants to look into this, Keith Hunter on YouTube, Ancient World Mysteries.